I'm in America at the start of a 5-week tour of America promoting this book, The Genetic Book of the Dead, A Darwinian Reverie, which is published on the 17th of September in America. I'm having a good time. I'm in Texas. The first stop was Dallas. The second stop is here in Austin. I've enjoyed both. I've been especially enjoyed the book signings where a really large number of people have thanked me actually, for changing their life, which is a wonderful thing to be told. And many people have told me that I've inspired them to take up a career in biology, to do a doctorate in biology, for example. So I've been very pleased about that, and I'm enjoying myself in America very much. And I'm also looking forward to getting back to England, where I'm continuing the tour there.
Obviously, there's a lot of things in science that haven't yet been worked on, and there are some things that haven't yet been explained. But the mistake is to say, because science can't explain something, therefore my rival theory can. I mean, there's no more reason to think that God... I mean, if, say you take a really mysterious thing like the origin of... Well, the origin of life is still pretty mysterious. That's the mud and lightning thing. Nobody really understands how the origin of life happened. But it's no kind of argument to say we have two rival theories here. Theory A so far can't explain the origin of life, therefore theory B must be right, because theory B can't explain it either. I mean, we as scientists have sort of let down the educational system by not teaching hard enough. And for example, evolution is not taught until relatively late in the curriculum. So even those people who do biology at school may well leave school without having done hardly any evolution. So, you know, it is something that we need to spend more time on and to do a lot better. I'm looking forward to seeing Frans de Waal, originally from Holland, now in America. He's a world authority on chimpanzees, studied them for many, many years. He has a very benign view of animal nature, and actually, I have no problem with that. I'm sure that many of his stories of the benign, empathetic behaviour of chimpanzees are absolutely right. He thinks I don't have a benign view of animals, and it's not true. It's a misunderstanding which I'm hoping to clear up. The point is that benign behaviour or empathetic behaviour needs explaining. It's a phenomenon that we have to explain. And selfish genes can explain benign behaviour in chimpanzees just as well as they can explain selfish behaviour in chimpanzees. But it'll be an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward very much to seeing the chimps, and he's a wonderful person to learn about chimps from. I think his view of animal nature is kind of poetic, romantic. And as I say, I'm sure he's right about the facts. It's just a matter of what the interpretation is.
Hi.
Frans, hello, nice to see you.
Good seeing you.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing your chimps.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Yes, good.
You want to go in here?
Yes, that's it. Well, this was built when this particular enclosure was...
Oh, this is old. This is like at least 30 years old.
Yes.
And the chimps are in there maybe 30 years.
Yes.
So most of the younger chimps were born in this enclosure.
Right, so they've known no other home.
They have known nothing else.
Right.
And it's a very tight group. It's a very closely knit group as a result of that.
Yeah.
So this is the tower. So the chimps are all locked up. For the moment you won't see anything.
Okay.
Because we're going to release them when we're up there.
And you work up here with a notebook and recording from...
We have
your
actually
vantage point up
computers.
here.
We type it in.
We type
usually.
it into computers.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's plenty for them to play with.
Yeah, we built last year this big wooden structure. It's sort of amusing.
Yes.
They had only this metal thing and a few other metal things.
Yes.
And for the first half year, they didn't want to sit in the wooden structure. They had been used all their life to the metal.
Yeah.
And so they were very conservative.
Yes.
And now they prefer the wood. So they make their own paths, you see that?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They made those.
Like people do
Yes.
the same thing, you know?
Yes.
It's just habit, I suppose.
Yes.
And so we put out some food that is shareable. If you give them individual little pieces of food, they just pop the food in their mouth and that's all they do.
Right.
But if you give them a watermelon like this, you may get food sharing.
Right.
Because one individual will claim it and then the rest will collect around them.
You're right. How many are there in this enclosure?
This has like a dozen.
Right.
And there's still some old females in here, over 35, who... one of them, I think, came from the wild long ago. The other's probably born at the Turkish Primate Center. But most of the chimps in here were born in this enclosure from this group, basically.
Yeah. Are those coconuts there?
Yeah, there's some coconuts.
How do they deal with those?
That's a... And a chimp is very strong, so they probably will crack them.
What, throw them against something or what?
Yeah, they bang them, but we'll see what they do.
Okay.
Some of them are good at it, and some of them takes them an hour to open them.
Do they learn from each other?
Yeah, they do some learning from each other. We're actually doing a lot of culture studies on this group, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
maybe.
you know, I just meant specifically opening.
Yeah, I think what they need to learn, which is the big trick, is to open them without losing the juice. You know, because if you bang them too hard, you lose everything.
Yes, right.
So they need to learn a special skill.
Yeah. Do you go down there yourself to study them?
No, not if I value my life.
Oh, really? What happens if you do?
Because chimps are very strong, and even though I know them, and most of them are very friendly with me, even if they give you a playful hit, maybe too much for a human, you know.
I see, yes. They don't bite you though.
No, let alone that they would get aggressive, which is always possible because they may not want me in there, you know. So no, we never do that. Even a young chimpanzee, like a 5-year-old, is too strong for a human. Has more arm strength than we do, and the adult males, they have 5 times human arm strength.
Really, yes.
So no, we never risk that sort of thing.
So the protective clothing which your colleague is wearing, that's not protection against the chimpanzees. That's purely to protect against
disease transmission.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, we are more worried about disease transmission from humans to chimps.
Yes.
So, for example, I'm tested for TB every half year.
Yes.
Because TB can wipe out a whole primate colony.
Yes.
So we're actually more worried about that. With the macaques, we're also worried the other way, because the macaques sometimes have a virus that is deadly for humans. But with the chimps, I don't think we have that.
Yes. Have you ever had attacks on humans from these chimps in this enclosure?
No, we've never had that, fortunately. But of course, at zoos and other places, this has happened.
Yes.
It has happened that people lose fingers, for example, in fights. Yeah.
And the people who do keep pet chimps, they're always juvenile, are they?
Yeah, you can keep them till maybe 5.
Yes.
And that's also why in Hollywood, the image that people have of chimpanzees is this tiny little thing that you put on your lap.
Because they're the only ones that are safe to...
That's the only things that you see in the Hollywood movies.
Yes.
Because as soon as they get adult, they become unmanageable, basically.
Yes. We think chimps are very, very intelligent, and of course they are, and some people think that means they wouldn't be violent and aggressive.
And what about humans?
Yes, indeed. Good point. Yes.
So I don't think intelligence rules out aggressiveness, just as, for example, being cooperative. Chimps can be highly cooperative and share food. Probably we're going to see that.
Yes.
But that doesn't rule out that, for example, outside the group, they can be extremely nasty.
Yes, and of course there's terrible stories of wars in Africa between
So I think, first of all, you need to distinguish in-group, out-group. So in-group is a very different business than out-group.
Yes.
But even within the group, if 2 males are vying for high status, yes, things can get pretty nasty sometimes.
Yes. Do you ever intervene when that happens?
I don't know, unless I think that the life of an animal is threatened. Otherwise, I won't interfere. But in this group, we had for a long time 2 males who grew up together and were always vying for dominance. Now, one of those two males has died of old age, and so this whole conflict is over now.
Yes.
But we've seen firsthand daily fights between males. Yeah. Yeah, the common impression of animals I always compare with sharks or piranhas is like animals kill each other and they're nasty to each other, and we humans are the only ones who are nice to each other. Now, of course, everyone who works with social animals like, let's say, wolves or chimpanzees or baboons knows that this is not a correct image that people have of the animal kingdom, but I try to correct that because I think there's continuity between human kindness and empathy, so to speak, and animal kindness and empathy. And these things are not as far apart as people sometimes assume.
Yes, I mean, there is another strand which says that humans are the only ones who go to war, humans are the only ones who kill, and we've lost our animal niceness. You can find examples of both, can't you, of this sort of poetic view? Yeah,
and that view is, of course, also wrong. If people say we are the only ones who kill each other, that was, for example, Lawrence's position in the 60s. Like, we were the only ones who kill each other. We now know lots of animals where killing actually happens. So, for example, chimpanzees in the field. These chimpanzees will not kill each other because they live in the same group and they all know each other very well. But if you put some stranger chimpanzee in here, that's not a good idea. That animal's probably going to be killed.
Yes.
And so, towards strangers, they're extremely hostile.
I think there's a risk of what I call poetic science, which is sort of, instead of trying to describe what's there, it's sort of taking an emotional view of something and trying to put forward a particular poetic view, which may be niceness or may be nastiness. There are people who say, oh, well, we've been concentrating too much on nastiness, the pendulum must swing to niceness, or too much niceness, pendulum must swing to nastiness. I think we need to just study what's there, and both are there, and then we need to bring to bear our analytical faculty and ask ultimate questions about what is it that produces both the niceness and the nastiness. We don't have to belong to different schools of thought. I'm the nice school of thought, he's the nasty school of thought. We should both be of the school of thought that we're interested in what happens and trying to explain what happens, whether it's nice or nasty.
Yeah, well, I'm actually interested in both. I started my studies in the time that Lawrence was very popular and everyone was studying aggression. What I noticed when I studied aggression in chimpanzees is that afterwards they sometimes come together and they kiss and embrace each other, which I call a reconciliation. And so from the study of aggressive behavior, which I saw plenty of, and which I still see plenty of, I got interested in how they resolve conflicts and what they do after fights. And all of that is measurable. So some of it, what I collect, is anecdotal, but let's say food sharing and grooming and consolation behavior and reconciliations, all of that occurs often enough that we can actually collect real data on it.
And grooming, mutual
grooming. We can collect data on that, and that's what we do, and then we analyze it. And I don't have necessarily an agenda of depicting chimpanzees as nice, because I've seen chimpanzees kill each other. So I don't have that impression that they're purely nice, for sure.
Yeah, we want fewer agendas. Yes, good.
Well, we're going to release the chimps who are in this building, which is our cognition building, where we present them with computers and joysticks and things like that. This is the sleeping quarters where they sleep. And so we're going to release them from here. All chimps are in there. They're going to find the food. They're going to be excited. Hopefully they're going to make some sounds, which they do when they get excited over food. And then some of them will pick up the food, and then we will see how they share it. You probably will see little fighting, but it is possible that a fight breaks out over the food. That's always possible.
Okay.
The sharing, they do, well, it depends on who gets the food. If a high-ranking male gets the food, there's usually sharing with females. If a particular, some females are very generous and share with others, but there's some others who will just claim the food and try to keep it all for themselves.
And they run away into a corner with it or something?
Or they go under the climbing frame or whatever they do.
Yeah.
I think the pumpkins are going to be less interesting than the watermelons. That's my guess.
Okay.
The pumpkins are here because it's a Halloween thing, and we have lots of those at the moment.
Yeah.
and they're hollow inside. I don't think they're going to be that excited, but who knows?
Yeah.
Hey, you can let them out. Yep. All right. See what happens. They probably already start vocalizing when the doors are opened, because they almost know everything, you know. Even though they can't see they already have seen us carry those things. Oh, there they are. That's Georgia.
Okay, she's going straight for the watermelon.
Yeah. That's the alpha male who comes out here in the beginning. The big one.
The blue.
Oh, she takes two. Really? She has taken two. Yeah, she's one of our most selfish chimps. But she cannot eat two, so this is going to be interesting. Oh, they leave the pumpkins even alone?
Yes.
They barely know those things.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens with the two watermelons. I don't think she can handle two. She'll lose one. These are food calls that you hear, the type calls.
Okay. She's trying to get up with both those watermelons.
She's pretty, stomach, what is it? The eye is bigger than the stomach. That's usually, how they operate.
How many males are there in here?
There's one adult male in here.
And all the rest are female?
Yeah. So she's still handling two watermelons. Yes.
It is. There's one with a coconut over there I'm watching.
Sort of amusing.
Okay, that one's punching the pumpkin.
Yeah, they're not used to those things.
Rolling the pumpkin along.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, she got it broken open now.
Yes. There's one with a coconut there who seems to be...
Yeah, what they try to do with the coconut is make a
it.
crack in it and then drink it empty, and then they crack it completely open.
Do they smash it on the ground to make it?
So you see the highest ranking male climbs on the climbing frame, and he has a small watermelon.
Yes.
He's being followed by a female.
Yes.
She's a bit afraid. She's a low-ranking female.
Yes. And rank is very important to them.
Rank is important, but this is the alpha female who comes up to him. She can barely climb, you see, she's very old. She'll get some. That female who took two watermelons is now surrounded by family members.
Yes.
Who probably get something. At some point, someone will take
there's one drinking from the coconut down there.
Yeah.
Yes. So she must have just made a crack in the coconut.
Yeah, they first make a small crack, and then when it's empty, when they drink it empty, then they crack it completely open.
Yes.
She's still holding on to the two watermelons. So the funny thing in a system of reciprocity, because these chimps, they are reciprocal altruists, is that someone who's very selfish, like she is, if she has no food, they won't share with her. So she has now been lucky she got two watermelons.
Yes.
But if she ends up empty-handed, then the others are not very eager to share with her. See, there's now someone reaching in.
Yes, one just reaching in and trying to take the second watermelon.
So this is the alpha male down here, being followed by a female.
He's the only male, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. So why do you call him the alpha male?
Well, there used to be more males, and he became the dominant. And he's the alpha. Yeah, the pumpkins are really not a big success, I think. So that male is being followed by three females now.
They're all moving fairly slowly, aren't they?
Yep.
Yes.
They're making food calls while they follow him.
What do food calls do in nature?
We usually interpret it as general excitement over food, but it has a sort of also a sort of contagious effect. If everyone is food calling, it's a bit like humans at a meal saying, this is good, this is good, you know, sort of. There's a bit of a social function. So what we're seeing is a cluster of females up on the climber that is trying to get food from Georgia, our most selfish chimp. And they're actually quite successful because they're reaching in and getting little pieces.
And she's the one who got 2 watermelons in the
they
first
got
place.
2, and I'm not sure she still has 2. Because, oh yeah, the second one is there. So she still has 2. But the other ones are reaching in. And then the alpha male is still being followed by females. Because I think those females think that they have a better chance getting food from him than from Georgia.
And there's one there with a pumpkin all on her own.
Yeah, I think the pumpkins are just not very attractive.
Yes. Well, she's eating it all right.
Now everyone is muscling in on those
so
watermelons.
They're neglecting the pumpkin and all crowded around the watermelons.
Yeah. At some point, someone is going to scream, I think. There's going to be some fight, I think. Although they're all reaching in and getting pieces out of it.
Reaching in with their hands.
Yeah. So there's one big family here. Georgia is a daughter of Bori, who's in the group, and then they have children. And so there's like 5 females or 6 females who are closely related. And they tend to share a lot.
And there are some who are not related, are there?
Yeah, some are totally unrelated.
And they don't share so much.
Well, I think they share on a different basis. We did studies of reciprocity in this group. So we would measure who grooms whom, and then we would introduce the food, and then we would see that they actually share more with the ones who had groomed them previously.
Yes.
So that old female who can barely walk, you see her going up to the pumpkin?
Yes.
She's very interesting because she takes the pumpkin now. Because the other younger females sometimes help her. This is very funny, is that she tries to get into the climbing frame and she can't, and we've seen young females push her up to get in there. We've also seen young females collect water for her. So they go to the water faucet, they put their mouth full of water, they go over to her, they spit it in her mouth.
Giving her water.
Yeah, here's someone who's not.
Oh, that's nice, cracking the coconut.
Yeah. That's the first screen over there.
Okay, now he split the coconut. She's splitting the coconut in half.
She's making it open.
How do they get the flesh out of the coconut, or do they eat the peel as well?
Yeah, I think they break it in further pieces.
Yes.
So you see one watermelon is now gone from that female, Georgia. Yes. That's why there was some screaming, because I think another female, unrelated female, took it from her. But you know, if you have 2 watermelons, then all you do is scream a little and keep the other one.
Yes. Surprised how slowly they move. I've sort of got used to seeing chimps in zoos kind of bounding around with great speed.
Yeah, if you have young ones, like all of these are adult except for 2. 2 are sort of young adult. They become slow, and especially that female who has arthritis is going to be slow.
Yes.
You know, if there's a big fight in the group, they can move very quickly if they want to.
Look at that. See, they were standing on her hind legs with the pumpkin.
I don't think she knows what to do with the pumpkin.
No.
She's getting in there, though. So that's Tara. That's actually not an adult. She's a younger one.
Yes.
Tara is our vein chimp. We do mirror tests with her. Most of them are not interested in mirrors. But she wants to see herself, her front, her behind, everything. You know, they have mirror self-recognition, the apes.
Yes.
And so, now she's breaking it open.
Yeah.
So she is the one, maybe younger females are like that, I don't know, but she's certainly very interested in herself. Yeah, the sharing, we do studies on the sharing, who shares with whom. There's a kin bias. The males are very generous sharers, generally, with females at least. And there's a strong sense of reciprocity in the sense that if A shares with B, then B usually shares with A. If A grooms B, then B will share with A. And so there's a reciprocity in the sharing process, mostly between non-kin, as you would expect.
Do you think there's also a reputation effect, that some of them get a reputation for sharing through watching each other share rather than sharing with themselves?
Yeah, we have not been able to study that because it's very hard, since these reputations are, if they exist, are so well established in a group like this. So what you would want is to manipulate it in an experiment.
Yes.
And you can only do that with individuals who don't know each other so well.
Yes, it's hard to do.
But here we have this Georgia who took the 2 watermelons. She has, at least in our eyes, a reputation of being extremely selfish.
Yes.
And so I bet everyone knows that.
Yes.
But if you want to study reputation in animals, you probably need to do it with strangers, because that's where you don't know how the other is, and then you can manipulate it.
Yes.
Because if animals like these, they have lived for 25 years all together in this enclosure, there's little we can do to change their reputations. You know?
Yes.
So you hear a little bit of screaming. That's
Yes.
because there's a bit of conflict now between those females. We cannot see who is doing what, but sometimes what happens is that the food owner is protesting against someone else reaching in.
Yes.
Yeah. She has this whole watermelon and she's unhappy that the others want some of it. She goes to the alpha female, now she goes to the alpha male. She gives him a kiss. That's always the last recourse for females, is if they get into trouble with each other, they want the male to solve the issue.
Yes, okay. And that's the male sitting with his back to us there, is it? Yes.
And the male, of course, has other things to do, and
Yes.
he's not always eager to get involved,
Yes.
and all of that. you know?
And is that Georgia next to him?
Yeah, that's next to him. She brought the watermelon close to him.
She's lost one watermelon. She's still got one whole watermelon
she
from the
lost
2
one.
that she got in the first place.
So the female who's walking next to her now on the left, that's the old alpha female, who is very influential, but also very gentle. She's never aggressive, but nonetheless has a big influence on the group. And for a female to be handicapped like she is, like arthritic, is not a handicap in the hierarchy. So you can have a female who is basically deteriorating physically, and she's still the alpha female. For a male, that's not possible. If a male starts deteriorating, some other male usually takes over.
And you measure that position in the hierarchy by what?
Well, the chimpanzees have a special ritual, which is called the pant grunting ritual, where they pant grunt at each other and they bow for each other. And this is actually a rare behavior, but if you take good measures on it, you can see the hierarchy reflected in that. And in her case, we also consider her the alpha female because she settles big disputes. So if there's a very big dispute in the group, she will usually go over and stop it.
How does she stop it?
Just by walking over and grooming one of the contestants, and that settles it for some reason. The male will stop it by stepping in and beating them apart if that's necessary. He will do it forcefully, but she doesn't do that. So it's interesting. So we gave them some high quality food, I think. We have had a few peeps and screams, and for the rest we haven't had anything in terms of aggression.
How hungry are they?
This kind of food is rare for them. So yes, they get monkey chow and things like that.
Yes.
But this kind of food is very unusual.
So it's a kind of treat for them. They're not really.
No, they're not
hungry.
deprived, of course. No.
No.
So you see the alpha female has taken over the whole watermelon from, I think it's from the male. So the male has let her do that.
Yes.
Now he takes a pumpkin. So that kind of interactions are interesting because the male is physically, he's the alpha male, and he's physically by far the strongest of all the chimps here. And he has a watermelon, and a female comes over and she takes it just out of his hands.
Yes, so he's definitely given it to her.
Yeah. We see one cluster of females on the climber there that has a watermelon. And there's a whole bunch of individual eaters, which is not particularly interesting for if you're interested in food sharing.
So that little cluster on the metal climbing frame are clustered around the remaining watermelon.
Yeah, the remaining watermelon is in the hands of a female who is the daughter of the previous alpha female. She's a very influential female, but she's not old.
And where's the old arthritic one?
She's, I think, behind the climber. You cannot see her at the moment. Oh, she's coming in here, yeah.
Oh, yes.
There she is. And
she's
got a big chunk.
Half a watermelon.
Which she got from the male.
Yes. And where is the male now?
He's sitting behind the climber.
Behind the metal climber?
Behind the wooden climber.
Okay.
Yeah. I've known this group since the mid-'80s, and so most of the individuals I've seen grow up from very small till very big. That's why I have a very good relation with most of them, but I would still not go in there. So I know all of them very well. And there's one big family. There's one, Bori is sitting on the top of the climber, right? She's the alpha female of the whole of that clan. So she has daughters and granddaughters, and that's a whole family system that they have. And she's very protective of them. So for example, there's one of them who doesn't like to be photographed, and if you aim a camera at her, that female will disappear, or put an arm over her head or something like that. And Bori, the grandmother, she will then come over and try to get rid of your camera. So she's very protective of her children and grandchildren. Well, the sharing is typically done, all individuals share, except for the juveniles. They're not good at sharing, but all adults will share. And the males generally share better than females, and share more generally and widely with a lot of individuals. And the females are more selective in their sharing. The females share preferentially with their offspring or sisters or family members. And they also share sometimes with unrelated individuals, and I think that sharing is done on a reciprocal basis, where they have some sort of reciprocity relationship. And we have actually evidence for that. We have, for example, we have evidence that if chimps groom in the morning, two chimps groom in the morning, that increases the probability that they will share in the afternoon. And we even found that it's especially between individuals who rarely groom. So if we groom all the time, that's not going to have a major effect on our food sharing, because we're probably already friends anyway. But if we are not very good friends, and today we have groomed, then that's going to have a major impact on what happens later in the day. So they seem to be having a very memory-based reciprocity system, reciprocal altruism, basically. And it's very hard to demonstrate that in one session. You actually need tons of sessions and lots of statistics, and then you can try to demonstrate it. The old female, her name is Penny. She was used long ago in a sign language study when she was a juvenile. And she became the highest ranking female here after the other high ranking female died. And since then, even though she's now arthritic and getting very old, she's very firmly the top female. And she's actually is very close to the alpha male because she adopted him when he was a juvenile. And so he's a sort of son of her. And the alpha male, he used to have a competitor in the group. And so they were always vying for their positions, and it was always the females who basically decided. So it was really chimpanzee politics, as I've described it long ago, is that the males had their attentions and the females would put all their weight behind one male or the other male, and that would decide who was going to be the alpha male. It's a bit like a voting system.
Do they mate in this enclosure?
Yeah, they mate, yeah.
What benefits does the alpha female gain from being alpha?
I think in the field, in captivity, it's a bit harder to see, but in the field, they have a more centrally located home range. with probably better fruit trees in it. So for the females, usually competition is over food, and for males, it's usually over sex. So that's why we usually call in primatology, we call the female the ecological sex.
Yes.
Is that the females go for food resources because they need to grow a fetus and feed children, and that's their main object, quality of offspring. Whereas males, they compete over access to females, and that's how they spread their genes. And so the males map onto the females, basically. The females decide how they map onto the environment, and then the males map onto the females, basically. And so male chimps, they're very much into status. They're very much into who gets which female. If there's, for example, one female swollen, I don't think there is one swollen at the moment, but if her genitals are swollen, then the male will constantly stay close to her. And if they're competitors, he will keep those competitors away from her.
Right. Is this about the size of a typical wild troop?
No, wild troop is bigger. Typically, wild troop is 80 chimps, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, that's Georgia. She's our star performer in many of our experiments. Georgia is a very smart chimpanzee. She was born in this group. She's the one who introduced certain traditions here. For example, we have a tradition of hand clasp grooming in this group, which she introduced, and then everyone copied from her. But she's also aggressive. She's not an easy character, and everyone knows that. And so that's actually why we sometimes use her for certain experiments. We do experiments on cultural learning, where we teach, for example, Georgia how to open a certain box. Then we introduce Georgia and the box to the group, and then everyone can see how she opens it, and they can hopefully learn from it. That's the sort of tests that we do. And we choose Georgia for that because she can keep the others away from the box, so that she gets a chance to demonstrate. Because if you take a low-ranking individual, or you take the alpha male who's maybe that day is not interested in the box, then you don't get a demonstration out of them. So Georgia is a very smart chimp that we use for a lot of our testing, but she is a bit of a difficult character.
You described her as selfish earlier. That's part of her difficulty.
She's selfish, she's nasty, and smart, all of that together.
What's the hand clasp gesture that you say she introduced?
Two chimpanzees sitting opposite each other and grasping hands, and then with the other hand they're grooming each other.
So they grasp, it's kind of shaking hands up here.
Yeah, and they put it above their heads.
Yes.
And then they groom with the other hand, they groom each other's armpits.
And is it left to right to right?
Yeah, I can demonstrate like this.
Is it?
And then I would be grooming here, and he would be grooming there.
Is it ever left to left or right to right?
Yeah, they can switch that.
So
in the middle,
yeah.
Okay. And so this is a behavior that has been observed in the field, in one or two communities. And now we have it in this group. We have another group of chimps where no one ever does it. But Georgia started it, yes. And it spread over the last 12 years. It spread to everybody. Everybody's now doing it. But the chance that you get it is low because it happens maybe 3-4 times a day. And for us scientists, yes, that matters, and we can count it and all of that. But for a camera crew to catch it is going to be very low probability.
Yes. And so you got a different group.
Yeah, we have a second group. Yeah.
Is it the same size as this one?
Yeah, approximately. Yeah. We have two groups that we compare. And so for the culture studies, for example, we can introduce one way of opening a box in this group. We can take the same box to the other group. We teach them another way of opening the box, and then everyone there is going to learn that particular
And
way.
how do you teach them?
Well, that's something that I can show later.
Okay.
Vicky was going to give a demonstration of how we open the box.
Yes. I like the way they're moving the barrel around.
Yeah.
What do they use that for standing on or something?
Well, and the male uses that barrel for intimidation displays. Sometimes he picks up one and then he starts pushing it around.
Okay, that's Georgia. That's not the alpha female, though. That's the selfish one.
No, that's Georgia.
Yeah.
That is Georgia.
And then to the right of her,
Georgia on the red.
On the ground is the alpha male. I don't see the alpha female. I'm not sure where she went. You may need to wait a little till she comes out, She's hiding somewhere.
Do they look as different to you as humans do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually interesting is that They used to say that chimpanzees are not very good at face recognition, and this was based on experiments where they showed them faces on the computer screen, and that only humans were good at face recognition. But they had shown the chimpanzees only human faces until that point. And so we started doing experiments. Lisa Parr here at Jerky's, she did experiments where she showed them chimpanzee faces, and they were all of a sudden just as good as people are.
Interesting.
So there was this bias that the experimenters thought, well, humans are so different if they cannot even do humans, they cannot do each other. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, they have facial expression. Of course, Darwin knew that already. Darwin wrote extensively about this, and for a long time people claimed that we have far more facial musculature, and so that our facial expressions are more subtle. But actually now, recently, anatomical studies have been done, and the differences are not nearly as great as people thought. So chimpanzees can have very expressive faces like open mouth, hooting, baring of teeth, but they can also have very subtle facial expressions that we from a distance barely notice, but that they probably notice when they're close to each other. So yeah, they have lots of facial expressions. They have a laughing expression, they can cry, they can hoot, they can look angry. Yeah, they have all sorts of facial expressions.
Do you think those facial expressions are directly homologous? Are they the same, doing the same thing as ours?
I think many of them, some of them we don't have, like hooting is not a typical human behavior. But many of the facial expressions I think are homologous.
When you say laughing,
so for example, it's usually called the play face. When they play, they open their mouths and they don't show their teeth. They make laughing sounds. They do type sounds. They do it when they tickle each other and when they wrestle with each other. And yeah, the expression is probably homologous because the same musculature is involved, the same sort of context is involved, the same sort of sounds are produced. So yeah, I think it's homologous.
Yes. But it doesn't look totally like ours. It's sort of... Would you be misled if you used human criteria when judging chimpanzee?
We bare the teeth more than the chimps do when we laugh, but we don't always bare the teeth. But if you put, for example, human children and chimps together, they perfectly understand this kind of communication between each other, because young children like to wrestle and tickle and all that kind of games, and they make the same sort of vocalizations and facial expressions.
And human smiles work, do they?
The human smile is more complex, because the human smile has a nervous component. So it has a friendly component, but also a nervous component. If someone smiles too much, we usually consider that a nervous person. And so that's true for chimps also. When they bare their teeth in a smile type of way, they're usually nervous. And so for example, in Hollywood, where they use chimpanzees in the movies, which I don't like, they usually get them to smile, so to speak, by scaring them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a total confusion, of course, what's happening then.
Has the alpha female turned up yet?
Let me see. Oh yeah, that's where she's walking. She's walking in a sort of humped whale
So
way,
she's slightly smaller than the one behind her.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other one is sort of teasing her. So she has trouble walking, but she
Because
gets
of her
around.
arthritis.
Yeah, because of her arthritis, but she gets around. We even built in some of the buildings a little bit of stairs for her, because she can barely climb anymore.
How old is she?
I think she's over 35. Chimpanzees, they live maybe to 45 in captivity. In the field, it's very unusual. In captivity, they sometimes even get older than 45, over 50 sometimes.
Do you think in the wild that she would have been, that Penny would have been replaced?
In the wild, if she cannot get up into a tree, I think she's gone. No.
Yes, she'd be dead. But would she have been displaced as alpha female before? I mean, it doesn't look as though she'd put up much of a fight. If there actually was a fight.
I don't think among the females the hierarchy is necessarily based on physical capacities. It's more based on age and personality.
Many students of animal behaviour have noticed what a difference it makes when they know they're individuals as individuals and have them labelled. Even people who study insects and things, it entirely changes when they mark the insects. And it's obviously very clear that when you're studying chimpanzees, you know them all as individuals, and you in your case, you've known them for very many years. and you treat them as personalities. Is there a danger of anthropomorphism, do you think, creeping in there?
Yeah, there used to be resistance to it, and then people would say, why don't you give them numbers instead of names? But then very soon the numbers take on the meaning of a name. So you're number 5, but you become number 5 for me.
I always thought that was a bit daft, really, trying to get around the problem by.
So you give them names, and I'm personally not so afraid of anthropomorphism because I take a sort of Darwinian position on this. Is that the psychologists insist on us that we give the simplest possible explanations always for everything they do. But that's basically pre-Darwinian, because my view is that if a chimpanzee does something similar under similar circumstances as humans, then the psychology behind it is probably similar too, because they're so closely related. The brains are basically identical. Our brains are 3 times bigger, but the brains are basically identical. So my assumption is that if, for example, chimpanzees form coalitions to achieve power among the males, and humans form coalitions in Washington, let's say, to get power among males in politics, the motivations behind it must be very similar. So I usually adopt a similar terminology, and I actually think that people who feel that you should give different labels to things, they should prove to me that things are different. So to give an example, I discovered reconciliation in chimpanzees. So after fights, they tend to come together, they embrace and kiss each other, and I call that a reconciliation. And then people said, why don't you call it post-conflict affiliative contact or something like that instead of reconciliation? So that you get a label that is not as loaded as the word reconciliation. And now we have a lot of evidence on chimpanzees and other animals that actually reconciliation probably functions to repair relationships, as you would expect from reconciliation. But they try to move me away from anthropomorphic terminology.
I mean, it seems to me to be rather pointless to say replace reconciliation with post-conflict conciliation, whatever it was, because that's also an interpretive word.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, other students of animal behavior will say you shouldn't call it either of those. What you should call it is something descriptive of the behavior itself. You know, the people, the Tinbergen school of bird behavior would call it the up-down display or something like that, rather than giving it a psychological.
And so instead of saying they kiss each other after a fight, you would say they have mouse-to-mouse contact.
Exactly, yes. I can sort of see some point in that. I can't see any point in the post-conflict conciliative gesture or whatever it was. That seems to be completely pointless.
No, but still, whatever you call it, you're still going to interpret it in a particular way, and then you can collect data and see if that interpretation is supported.
Yes,
that's, of course, what we do.
You do collect data, and you collect data on the behavior.
Yeah.
Frans, in your writings, you're famous for emphasizing kindness and empathy and things like that. But in your commentary on what these chimps are doing, you also have emphasized reciprocation and kinship relations. There's no conflict between those two ways of looking at it?
I don't think so. I think altruistic behavior evolved certainly to serve the individual. So I think the evolution of altruistic behavior is either reciprocal altruism or kin selection, maybe group selection, but I'm sort of hesitant about that.
So am I.
So I would say, yes, things evolve to serve the individual. But that doesn't tell you much about the motivation and the reason that the individual itself at the moment has. So to give an example, sexual behavior. Sexual behavior evolved to serve reproduction. But animals don't know the connection between sex and reproduction, and they are motivated by sexual drives or whatever we call it. And humans too. Humans, most of the time, they engage in sex without necessarily thinking about reproduction. I think the same is true for all these altruistic behaviors, is they are motivated probably by empathy, by kindness and bonding between individuals. But in the end, yes, in the long run, they're going to serve the individual, I think. And so these things are not in conflict. You know, in biology we usually call it the proximate and the ultimate perspective. The ultimate reasons for doing things may be perfectly selfish, but the proximate reasons, the psychological reasons why animals engage in certain behaviors are not necessarily selfish, I think.
Well, I totally agree with that, and my feeling is that the phenomena that we see which you've described as empathetic, are phenomena which need explaining, and we're going to explain them. In my case, we're going to explain them in terms of selfish genes. But of course, selfish genes give rise to altruistic behaviour, and so there is no conflict there. But do you think that there's some sense in which your chimpanzees go beyond what you would expect on evolutionary grounds in their kindness? And
they sometimes do. So, for example, bonobos, for example, one bonobo at the zoo has been known to save a bird, and I'm sure there is no gene for saving bird in the bonobos, and there would be no good reason for that kind of gene. But I think once you have these empathic capacities installed in an animal, or in humans for that matter, it can be applied outside of the immediate context in which it evolved. And so if you put humans in a pack of wolves, let's say you are a human, you're raised in a pack of wolves, you're probably going to act with the wolves and being kind to wolves, even though that's not necessarily why your kindness evolved.
yes, I agree with you. I think there's no problem with that. I mean, you could think of it as a kind of misfiring, and a very nice misfiring, but it's a bit like a foster parent of a cuckoo, which plays out the instincts, which
parental instincts,
which are put in by natural selection of genes, and the foster parent, the reed warbler or the hedge sparrow, whatever it is, doesn't know it's got a cuckoo, and so it shows the same motherly love.
But even if you know it, so take humans who adopt a child. There's plenty of people who do that. They adopt a child who's totally unrelated to them. They invest an enormous amount of energy in that child. They are following a psychological program that has been installed for your own offspring, but they're just applying it to somebody else's offspring.
I mean, they cognitively know it, just as we cognitively know that copulation is aimed at reproduction, and yet we still enjoy it even with a contraceptive. It's not a problem. Natural selection doesn't build in cognitive appreciation of the laws of natural selection. It builds in lusts and desires, and there is a lust for kindness, there's a lust for empathy, which has been built in by natural selection, and which is going to play itself out even when it's not, in this particular instance, appropriate.
So it has been built in to, on average, and in the long run, to serve certain goals, and it probably does that, even still in our species, even though we now live in societies in large cities where we have a lot of anonymous contacts, but even there, probably it's still in our interest to follow that kind of tendencies. But of course, if you take the original humans, they lived in a small community where everyone knew everyone. And so if I engaged in reciprocal relationships with, I would probably benefit from that.
Exactly, because the people that you meet in those small groups, you're going to meet them again and again. And so the rule that's built into your brain says, be nice to everyone you meet. And that works in nature because everyone you meet is going to be part of the small group. Similarly, everyone you meet is actually probably going to be a cousin because they go around in kin groups in a state of nature.
But don't you feel that the proximate ultimate distinction, which is what we're talking about here, is sort of neglected and sometimes in the social sciences?
I'm sure.
It's like they present humans as if they have a cognitive map of these ultimate goals, which we don't necessarily have.
No, that's right. No, that's right. And very many misunderstandings arise because people don't get the significance of the difference between a proximate and an ultimate explanation. I mean, I suspect the social scientists, many of them, don't really think in a Darwinian way at all, and so in a sense they don't have an ultimate explanation. Or if they do, it might be rather sort of wishy-washy, like for the good of society or something of that sort. If you say something like, why do female chimpanzees have these sexual swellings? The proximate explanation would be, oh, well, they swell under hormonal influence, and so there are hormones in the blood which cause them to swell. The ultimate explanation would be it's attractive to males, and that's the advantage of it, that's the functional significance of it, that's the ultimate explanation. And almost anything we look at in animal behavior, you do need to make that distinction. So when you were talking about motivation just now, there you were talking about proximate explanation.
Well, kindness, for example, if a chimpanzee helps an unrelated individual, You may, of course, argue that is because there's reciprocity and there will be return favors, but it's not clear to me that the chimpanzees know that there will be reciprocity in the future. That's a sort of cognitively very demanding explanation, because that would mean that they make predictions. If I groom this one today, tomorrow I will get a favor. And I'm not sure that chimpanzees do that, or certainly a lot of animals.
We don't need to say that.
Yeah.
And it could be true, but we don't need to say that. It still works whether it's cognitive or not.
So the cognitive predictions don't need to be there, as long as they show behavior that in the long run benefits themselves one way or another.
So the proximate explanation for being nice would be that you have an urge to be nice, which might feel very like the urge for sex. I mean, it would be, well, sex is even simpler. The proximate explanation for wanting sex is something about the nervous system, something about hormones, the enjoyment of sex, the enjoyment of orgasm, all that sort of thing is part of the proximate explanation. The ultimate explanation is what good does it do the genes? Why was it naturally selected? For reproduction, because that's the way the genes get themselves into the next generation. The two are essential. They're not rivals to each other. They're not competing for our attention.
Well, you're a student of Tinbergen, so you know the 4 Whys article, which is still an article that we give to students. And what is it? 1965?
1963.
1963. Yeah. So it's the 4 Whys, why we do things, and one of them is an evolutionary, the other one is developmental, the other one is, let's say, more psychological, and so. Tinbergen tried to lay that out to resolve some of the conflicts between disciplines which came about at that time.
And just as our lust for sex is there, that's the proximate explanation, even though we're using a contraceptive, so it's not actually performing its ultimate function. So it's entirely reasonable that animals should have a lust to be nice, which comes from the ancestral history in which being nice was a good thing because it got reciprocation or it benefited genes through kin selection. So when I see another human being in distress, weeping or something like that, I have an almost uncontrollable urge to go and console, to maybe, put my arm around them. What's the matter? How can I help? Please let me help you. And that's a strong inner urge, which as a Darwinian, I believe has ancestral roots in a past when I lived in small groups like this, small bands, in which I was likely to be surrounded by kin or surrounded by individuals who could reciprocate. I no longer am. This person who is weeping is a complete stranger to me. They will never reciprocate. And yet the lust is still there. I can't help it.
Well, that's what in humans we call empathy. And there is increasing evidence for empathy in animals. We do actually studies of consolation in the chimpanzees. At the moment, one of my postdocs is going through 12 years of data where we have I think 5,000 fights among the chimpanzees, and then we see what happens afterwards. And in the data we can see if they embrace the other, kiss the other, groom the other who has been in a fight. And actually chimpanzees do that, and so they have empathic responses, and recently a paper came out on mice having even empathic responses. And so I think empathy is a sort of neglected topic. But empathy relates very much to this motivational system that sits behind altruism, basically.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there's been a lot of misunderstanding of the idea of the selfish gene, because the selfish gene is very much not the selfish individual. And as you very well understood, you more or less just said it yourself. And so in some ways it might have been better if I'd called my book not the selfish gene, but the altruistic individual, because it would have come to the same thing.
Or maybe the self-promoting gene.
Well, you can even go further. The altruistic individual, the book is mostly about how you explain altruism in individuals. But you explain altruism in individuals in terms of selfishness at the gene level. Selfishness at the gene level plays itself out because of what we've been talking about, because of the ancestral past, living in groups or whatever it is, with kin groups and things. Selfishness at the gene level shows itself as altruism at the individual. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the chimps have certainly slowed down.
Yeah, they're having a bit of a nap now, aren't they? The point about the selfish gene is that those genes that survive are the ones that propagate themselves at the expense of their rival genes. But altruism at the level of the individual is one of the important ways in which they do that. And so when you see
any kind of behavior, whether it's empathetic behavior or aggressive behavior in chimpanzees, whatever it is you see, that's got to be explained in terms of selfish genes.
Yeah.
But selfish genes are just as good at explaining altruistic behavior as they are at explaining selfish behavior.
But maybe the problem is that it is certainly a self-promoting gene. And so the word selfies has a motivational content, of course. And I think that's where people sometimes get confused between, if we have selfish genes, it means that we must be selfish. And those things need to be kept apart.
Well, they really do. I mean, it's a very unfortunate confusion, because most of the book is about altruistic behavior.
Yeah.
And I think from that point of view, it's a bad title. And I think it's as I say, if the title had been The Altruistic Individual, or even The Selfish Gene and the Altruistic Individual, that would be that would have been a
It's
good
a bit
title.
long, though. Yeah.
It's a bit long. It's a bit long.
I think if
That's
people
right.
can make the distinction between evolution, genetic evolution, and human psychology, that's the big distinction they need to make. And yes, human psychology is produced by genetic evolution. That's true. And the genetic evolution is self-serving. That's true also. But the psychology that it produces can be very kind, or can be very nasty, can be
Yes.
all sorts of things.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's the same is true for chimpanzees. The chimpanzees here in this group, they tend to be nice to each other, but we know that chimpanzees can also kill each other. So yes, they have a capacity for empathy, but they can also, for example, they hunt monkeys and they eat them alive, which is not necessarily an advertisement for high levels of empathy, but they do that too. And the same is true for humans,
Yes,
of
I
course.
was just going to say the same thing.
We have a strong capacity for empathy, but we don't always use it, and we don't always follow it.
Yes.
But that's good that you have proximate and ultimate in there, because I think that's one of the big issues with people.
I agree.
They don't
Yes, I
follow
agree.
that, you know?
Yeah.
And especially, I'm a biologist who lives in a psychology department, and in the social sciences, that understanding is absolutely not there.
Yes.
That you need to separate it.
Well, that's very serious, because it's part of a bigger problem, which is that social scientists don't really take Darwin seriously.
Yeah, they also want to maintain discontinuity, even though Darwin, of course, very much insisted on continuity. So they will say, yes, humans do a lot of things, but they're totally different from animals.
As biologists have taken on board Darwin's message of continuity, and many social scientists really haven't got there.
Yeah. So they're sort of toying with evolution a little bit. Oh, gee. That's really something. I don't know where they're going. Devin, can we stop that?
Well, I think they're leaving, aren't they, now?
No,
Just arrived.
there's no exit
They
there.
weren't the noise.
I'm sorry.
No.
What are they gonna do?
He's just going to put it down and leave.
Okay. That's good.
In Japan, that reversing noise is not barb, barb, barb. It's a sheep noise. They have a loudspeaker going, bah, bah. I think what
Do they
that's
not have
about.
sheep there?
I think they do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, why would you choose a sheep noise?
The sheep there are really dangerous.
They actually don't have sheep. I'm not even sure they
Maybe
eat
they don't.
sheep.
Maybe they don't know.
Is that truck gonna leave or?
Truck will leave, but we can't stop the cage wash.
No, it's all very difficult.
Cage washing.
What's it doing?
The cage washing.
They're washing cages.
they're
that's
washing
what the
cages.
noise was. And this truck is going
Oh,
to
the truck is leaving?
drop a load and then leave.
Oh,
apparently.
okay.
We could try it now while it's quiet.
think it cracked then.
All right. So do you see Desmond Morris sometimes?
Yes, from time to time, yes. He's in pretty good shape. Ramona's not. She's not too well.
Because I remember calling him like a year ago, because I know him, he was the professor of Jan van Hoof. And Jan van Hoof is my professor. So I called him like a year ago, and he sounded so busy. Like, oh, Frans, I still need to write 2 books at least, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
And he must be like 75 or something, huh?
Yeah, I think he is, yes.
Yeah.
But we're not recording this sound. You sometimes refer to the veneer theory of human nature, where the idea is that there's a veneer of civilized niceness on the surface, but deep down we're wicked, ruthless, aggressive, and attribute that, I think, with some justice to Robert Ardrey, for example, and possibly even Conrad Lawrence. It isn't right, though, to attribute it to the selfish gene, because that, as we've seen, the selfish gene is all about the altruistic individual. So it's really not saying that there's a veneer of niceness, of enclosing a sort of central core of nastiness. That would only be right if you took a kind of poetic view that the genes are in the central core, and then there's a kind of civilization on the outside. The genes are everywhere, in a sense. I mean, the genes are what are naturally selected. That's back to the ultimate explanation again. But the central core in the brain, the central core of human nature, could very well be nice, for exactly the reasons we've been talking about. So I think there is a kind of confusion between what one means by the central core and what one means by the veneer, and the distinction between genetic and non-genetic explanation.
Yeah, well, I think the reason I speak of veneer theory is because we've seen like 30 years of books published on how humans are not inherently kind, humans are deep down nasty, and if we are kind, it's only to make a good impression on each other,
yes,
or to for no really kind reasons at all. It's just for selfish reasons.
But there you're talking motivation. You're not talking evolution. Yes.
And so people have depicted us as not really inherently moral, and if we are moral, it's just a little veneer over human nature.
Yes.
And I take opposition to that. Darwin himself believed that the social instincts, as he called them, were continuous between animals and humans, and that these positive tendencies are inherently present in humans. And Thomas Henry Huxley was actually the first one, I believe, who tried to draw that line and say inherently we are nasty, but in society we sometimes are kind, but that's not deep down what we are. And so I take opposition to that view. And it may be a bit of a straw man. Some people have said so, is that actually the people who write that way don't necessarily believe that humans are inherently nasty, but that's how it comes across to a lot of people.
Well, I think Ardrey did believe that. I think African Genesis does put that central core of nastiness.
But did Huxley believe it, for example?
Well, I think Huxley was rather more saying that natural selection is an unpleasant, ruthless force.
That's for sure.
And again, putting a human spin on it, and in a way that's right. I mean, if you say, what would a world governed by if human society built itself on Darwinian grounds, as the social Darwinists wanted to do, it would be a very unpleasant society in which to live. It would be a kind of, well, super Thatcherite society, and you and I both wouldn't like that at all, and Huxley didn't either. So Huxley was saying, let's learn about natural selection as a lesson in how not to organize society. But that's a bit different from saying that humans as individuals are inherently nasty.
Yeah. So yes, natural selection is a ruthless, merciless, is an ugly process.
Yes.
But it can produce ugly behavior, but can also produce very nice.
Exactly. And what you emphasize depends on the animals you're looking at. I mean, you see the phenomena. You see the phenomena of nastiness sometimes, even in chimps. I mean, you see both, as you've been emphasizing. There are times when you see chimps being extremely unpleasant, times when you see them being very nice. Both those kinds of behavior need explaining.
But you know that in political ideology it has also been used. So, for example, what we call social Darwinism, which is very prominent in this country, in the US, is a sort of ideological streak which says, well, animals are not nice to each other, we humans should not be nice to each other. There's no reason, for example, to help the poor, because the poor need to help themselves, and if they cannot do that, then they perish, and that's fine too. And so that kind of philosophy, which is sort of directly derived from natural selection, skips that whole part of human psychology that's in between. Because human psychology is not necessarily that way.
It not only skips that, but it also makes the assumption that which is in nature is good.
Yeah.
And we can rebel against that. We can say, no, this is even if that is how nature is, even if nature is horrible and nasty, we don't have to be like that.
Yeah, that's
a different point from the point you're making. Is that nature very often is nice, which of course is also true, in particular species such as chimps and maybe bonobos even more.
I see a need to correct views because there's two kinds of reactions to biology. There's a group of people who basically rejects biology in the social sciences, as we don't want to have anything to do with it. And look at us, we're actually quite nice species, and there are people who tell us that we're not, and things like that. And there's another group who buys whole scale into this and says, well, since nature is not nice, we are inherently not nice. And I feel they're misunderstanding the connection between natural selection, which is indeed not a nice process, and what natural selection can produce, which is all sorts of psychologies, including empathy and sympathy, and including warfare, and all sorts of things can be produced by it.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. I mean, I think we're in total agreement there. Which is nice, because looking at the literature, it would appear that we have a disagreement. I mean, if anybody reading your books would think that you had strong disagreement with me, that you were lumping me in with Robert Ardrey. And I have to take the blame for that, in the sense that a title like The Selfish Gene could be misunderstood. But I hope it is now at least clear that in the content of the book, there is really no disagreement between what we're saying.
No, and I think that's because we are from the same school of ethology, basically, which is very well aware of the difference between proximate and ultimate. If you were a social scientist, we would probably never reach an agreement on this. But as biologists, we're very used to this sort of double think that we do in biology. Like you have the psychological and proximate explanations and the evolutionary ones. And you need to keep them separate.
So we agree about the need for ultimate explanations for the phenomena. And what you have got is a fascinating series of phenomena to describe. And we've heard about some of them. But perhaps you could talk a bit more about some of the examples of niceness and particularly empathy that you see in your chimps.
Yeah, so one story relates to these chimps. That's on Penny, the female here, who can barely climb, and sometimes others help her up into the climber, or others bring her water sometimes and spit water in her mouth, because for her it's a long walk to get to the water faucet. But the more spectacular stories that I know, some of them are on bonobos. For example, there was one bonobo at the zoo in the UK who had found a little bird that had hit the glass wall of her enclosure. And the bird was stunned. And she took the bird to the highest point of her enclosure. And she unfolded the wings and she sent it out like a little airplane almost. Which is very interesting, because she must put herself sort of in the shoes of a bird. And there's such a different creature it would not be appropriate behavior, obviously, to an ape, but to a bird it seems like an appropriate reaction. There are many of that kind of stories of apes rescuing each other. For example, an ape entangled in ropes, and others come over and untie the ropes from them. Very complex actions sometimes that take some perspective taking.
Yes. Frans, tell me some more stories about empathy in chimps.
Well, the typical empathy response that we actually can measure, that's how common it is when someone is distressed. Let's say there's a big fight, someone loses the fight. Very often another one will go over to them, put an arm around them, try to calm them down, groom them. We call that consolation behavior, and actually that's common enough that you can collect data on it. Most of the cases, of course, that we have are more like anecdotal stuff, like helping someone, or a case that we had at another zoo, for example, was a female who had been trying to get a tire off a rack in which in the tire was water, and she wanted to take the tire with her, probably to scoop the water out of the tire, and she was unable to, and she worked on it for 15 minutes getting the tire off, and she was unable. Then a young male who was raised by her, so was sort of son of her, he went to the rack and he did the small thing. He took a whole bunch of things off, and then he could get the tire out. And he brought it to that female. He brought it to her and put it in front of her, and then he left. And so it was almost as if he had measured sort of what she was trying to do. He had understood her goals, and he had fixed the problem for her. Those are more complex things that require some perspective taking. And of that, we basically only have anecdotes. And there's some experiments now. There's some people who have done experiments where chimpanzees help each other in a very directed way with some insightful understanding of the goals of others. But most of the time what we see is calming behavior towards, let's say, a young chimp falls out of the climber, screams, and immediately an adult goes over and tries to calm it down. That's a more typical response.
I agree that could be empathy, but that could be playing with a toy. It could be like getting a model aeroplane and
yeah, although the bonobos seemed worried about that bird, yes, and protected the bird.
Yes, well, I think that's also perfectly plausible.
I'm very interested in empathy because I think empathy is multi-layered and goes back to all the mammals. It actually goes back probably to parental care. Probably a female mammal could not raise offspring without being sensitive to the emotional states of her offspring, and when they're cold or in danger or frightened. And so I'm interested in all the levels of empathy, and in chimpanzees, I think in chimpanzees, elephants, dolphins, you see the higher levels. And those higher levels are correlated probably with a strong sense of self. So I'm also interested in self-awareness. That's why we did, for example, a mirror test on elephants recently, and people have done lots of mirror tests on chimpanzees. Chimpanzees have a strong sense of self, which allows them to have these more complex forms of empathy. But you know, once you have the capacity to be altruistic, you can direct it at almost anything.
Yes.
And humans do that. We rescue people from fires, unrelated people.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that we're not making use of an evolved psychology necessarily.
Yes. Well, you know, I'm very interested in what you're saying because my latest book is about religion, and one of the constant complaints I get from religious people is, how do you explain morality? Where does morality come from? Okay, now what's that curious gait there now?
I don't know
walking like a wheelbarrow.
I don't know what she's doing.
Have you seen that before?
No.
That's very strange.
Something new.
See, that is bizarre. Can you film that? She's walking along with her. She's like a wheelbarrow. Look. There. Look at that. Are you getting it, Tim?
Yeah.
I have never seen that. You've never seen that, Frans?
No. I think it's probably her swelling, but she can also walk on 4 legs, and she wouldn't be dealing with the swelling this way.
Okay, now she's changed.
Yeah.
That was fascinating.
You see that the pumpkins, they don't really like
finished
that.
the pumpkins, but there are no watermelons left.
No.
And coconuts, are there any coconuts left?
Yeah.
Can't see any coconuts left.
The grooming, you see the alpha male is grooming a female there.
Right, where behind
No,
the...
on the ground.
On the ground, okay.
Next to
the
pumpkin.
Yes, got it, yeah, okay.
He's grooming.
Yes.
So when we take data on them, of course, my technician, he needs to recognize them from the back, from even just seeing one leg. Hey guys, this is the good thing. Some of them don't get it.
Yeah, right. Do it again though.
Another one. Well, I'm not sure she's catching two.
She's got that.
Okay, I'm gonna throw one here. Here. Well, this is Penny here, the old female. Right there. This is Socko, the alpha male. You see the big one there? Very close. The next one is May, an old female.
Well, who's the one with the hand raised there?
That's Donna. That's my favorite. There she goes.
Well caught.
Hold on.
She got that one.
Hold on. No. Did you get that?
Oh? Did you get
So I'm getting close shots just of the meeting and stuff. If I'm trying to follow this,
No, fine.
I'm not going to get it.
I'm gonna throw one to the...
All I'm saying to him is that we can hold off on
Yeah,
the
so
phone
do it.
until you're ready.
I'm gonna throw one to the distant one there with the pumpkins.
Just a minute, and I will tell you when. Just a minute. Okay, so.
Oh, she has to walk for it. Yeah, she has a big swelling. But it's not fully swollen. Yeah, Socko.
Oh, that's nice.
So Socko I've known since he was a little kid, but he's now the big man. Penny. Yeah. Oops.
Slightly further away, it's the two. So
Further away.
Those two
yes.
there, those two there.
So that's Georgia there. Boom. Georgia. And behind Georgia is her daughter Katie. Katie doesn't like cameras, and I think that's why she's a bit nervous.
yes.
And that's Tara, who's walking up, the young female. No, she's not daring to take it when Socko turns around.
let's just hold off on the throne, and then maybe just get a few.
Yeah.
These will cut in with the other feeding before.
Uh-huh. Yeah, this is May who's making the noises. So they have learned certain things to draw attention from us. You want to have another one coming to them?
Yeah, to the one making the noise.
May. There you go. Boom. Boar, he is the one on, here in front, here.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We'll just get it. So which one? The one.
She's gone, yeah, let me see. The one clapping is Kate. Katie. Oops. And then this is Donna down here. You get this one? You can get her? Donna.
This one.
No, you can't. No.
The one on the platform's finished her apple, so you could try throwing another one.
Okay. You want to
get?
That's Rita, the one on the platform. Rita. Okay, catch. You get her?
Yep.
She
Nearly.
lost it.
She got it last time.
I got another one. Keep her.
Oh, brilliant.
They can also throw, you know, they can catch and throw. They can actually throw very accurately, chimpanzees. I'll throw another one. That's her daughter who tries to steal the apple. Did she steal it? Yeah, she got it. Amazing. Did she?
Frans, can we save an apple or two for Richard to throw?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. I'll throw the last banana. Yeah? To the big male here, down here. You want to do that?
Just get a tiny bit of this. It's quite nice. Just.
All right. So when does he throw this? Or
Well, after Tim's happy that he's got lots of close-ups, then we'll...
so keep them around. Yeah. So I throw this watermelon in. I cannot throw it. I cannot throw this thing very far. Oh, you see, they're very excited. Zoom in on the ones down here.
Don't brain them.
They're very excited. You see? Hey, you want to have this?
Just a minute.
It's gonna scatter into pieces.
Okay.
Socko, yeah, I know you want it. Okay, watch. There goes.
Let me just get a few shots of the eating.
Donna. Yeah. Yeah, I know. So maybe, yeah, we can do that later. If he changes the lens, then we can throw in things. So what is this strange walk that
That she's
Missy
fully
has
swollen.
developed? Huh?
She doesn't want Sako to notice that she's fully swollen, so she hides her. When she gets at her fullest point of swelling or around there, she hides it.
And does this work as a technique?
I don't think it works that well, but she kind of stays away from her that way. If he really is interested, then he will away
He
from her.
doesn't want
He
Sako
doesn't
to
want to
notice.
be mated.
I think Sako is a potential father. Young females are known to not want to mate with males who are old enough to be their fathers.
Right. Yeah.
So it's an inbreeding avoidance
Yes,
type
yes,
thing.
yes,
Even
yeah.
though, of course, she doesn't know much about
Yes.
inbreeding.
Yes.
That's an interesting explanation. I'm not sure.
Is he her father, in fact?
No, he's
No,
not.
no.
He's not. But he's old enough.
Yes.
So what's your next stop?
Gainesville, Florida.
To do what?
Going to look at fossils.
What was the best thing?
Google Maps.
It's always better to fly. Airlines from here, probably. Okay, so Richard, you want to feed them? Actually?
Yeah, I'd love to.
There's some food here.
So
Why don't you
I'll try throwing an apple to Soko.
that? Yeah. Oh, he'll take it. Sako. Oh, that's a food grunt that he gave.
Yes.
One by one.
Try-
Frans, if you can tell Richard the names and then Richard can call them.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Anya.
Anya. Anya is holding her. She's on her hind legs. Anya, here's a banana.
And behind Behind Socko is Bori, one of the oldest females. Oh, don't throw them all in.
Bori, and behind Bori is...
Penny.
Penny's the oldest one.
Yeah. Those two, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
they're all coming now.
So, and this one here standing
This
on
is
hind
Georgia.
legs?
This is
Georgia. Georgia,
She catches.
she well caught. And Apple. Wait, who's that one?
That's
with the hand
Penny, the one in the back. She's
Penny.
coming forward now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Penny.
I'll wait till she's raised her hand again.
Oops. Yeah, she got it. You want to try to throw, do you still have one apple? Try to throw it at Rita. Rita!
Rita?
Yeah, she's on the top there. Ah,
Missed.
missed.
I'll take the paper label off.
Yeah, it's good. Did you get that
Hand a
catch?
banana to Rita.
Oh, that's going to be hard.
Why is it hard?
Well,
Because like a boomerang.
yeah. Almost. Let me try it out. Give me one. See what I can get to. Nope.
That's right. Wait.
Oh,
Oops.
Oh, there's some banana. There's some bananas and coconuts.
Yeah, throw all of it in.
we're not overfeeding them, are we?
No. This is all they eat, you know, fruits.
Yes. They all seem to have something at the moment. Socko? Do they know their names?
Oh yeah, they know even each other's names.
Nice catch. Okay. Drop your...
Yeah, she's afraid. So do we throw the coconut in also?
Sure.
What are we gonna do with this? Huh?
Don't hit anybody on the head.
It's probably gonna crack open when I throw it. Let me try that. Yeah,
Yes.
see? I'll show them the empty bucket. And then they all know that's the end of
Okay.
it. They understand that.
Yes.
See? Get up in the water.
Yes, very nice.
So this was a good day for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
so
interesting.
I'm disappointed by the pumpkins, but and
Yes,
they were
yes,
disappointed
yes,
clearly. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm not disappointed by having seen this. It's been really fascinating, Frans. Thank you very,
Yeah.
very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
glad
you.
to have you.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can show some support by subscribing to the podcast, sharing it with your friends, and leaving a review.